It is my great pleasure now to launch CEDA's latest research. Before I do that, I'm just going to make one comment, which is whoever thought it was a good idea to launch some research on the opening day of their national conference probably needs their head read, and that would be me. So, but it is good to be launching the research. Community Pulse 2018, the Economic Disconnect. I think I saw most of you with copies of the publication, which is available outside. Let me just talk a little bit about why CEDA undertook this research and then take you through the main findings that we wanted to talk about today. It won't surprise you that the Committee for Economic Development of Australia thinks that economic development and economic growth are important issues for Australia. I'm an economist by training. Not surprisingly, I think the economy and economic growth are important. And this whole message around economic growth being good and economic growth equating to prosperity is a theme that we're probably all fairly familiar with. But I think what's also become increasingly apparent to people is that that message doesn't seem to be resonating with the wider community. And we've seen that manifest in a number of ways, not least being the great difficulty that seems to exist at the moment for getting comprehensive reform agendas up and running in this country, and for building a strong consensus behind reform agendas that organisations like CEDA probably think are very important to Australia's future. And so as CEDA sets about in 2018 thinking about what our longer-term agenda should be as an organisation, one of the things that we wanted to do was to try to better understand that disconnect. Because if we're going to develop an agenda that resonates with the community and which therefore can gain the support of the community and the support of politicians and policymakers, then I think we really need to understand why the message isn't connecting around economic growth equals prosperity. And what are the issues that the community is looking for us to address as CEDA and as a nation? So in a nutshell, that's sort of the background to why we undertook this survey. It's the first nationwide survey that we've undertaken. We polled just under 3,000 people around the country, which means that the results are actually pretty robust, including across all of the states individually, but also in terms of presenting a national picture to us. And what we wanted to do was really explore three key issues: how people feel they've benefited from 26 years of sustained economic growth, because that's of course the narrative we're all used to, Australia's record run of economic growth. And we wanted to understand what people's policy priorities are from the perspective of them personally, thinking about their personal lives, but also thinking about the issues that they think matter to Australia's future. And then we also wanted to understand how they feel that they're faring in their jobs and employment circumstances at the moment, and to explore a couple of issues that are emerging in the employment space, including, for instance, the impact of technology. Now, in my comments today, I'm really going to focus on the first two of those. And if you're interested in the third element, or if you would like to hear more about how the results play out across different states and territories, we are going to be doing a number of events in coming months, weeks and months, that will explore those issues in great detail. But what I wanted to do was paint a bit of a national picture today. So let me start with that top line question that we asked people. How do you think you have benefited personally from 26 years of sustained economic growth? And I have to say this result surprised me because the answer was that 5% of survey respondents said that they personally have gained a lot from 26 years of economic growth. So 1 in 20 people feel that. 40% of people said that they gained a little. 44% of people said they'd gained not at all. And 11% of people said that they didn't know. Now, I think that's a result that gives you a sort of a bit of a moment for pause, particularly if you're a believer of the growth equals prosperity narrative and the power of that narrative, because I think what this tells you is that that narrative is not cutting through. And if we're going to pursue a reform agenda on the basis that it's going to drive growth and you'll be better for it, I think this result tells you that that message isn't having cut through. When we looked at some of the demographic results, the other result within this that really surprised me was that fully 50% of people aged 50 and over felt that they had not gained from economic growth. Right? Now, this is the baby boomers, loosely described the baby boomers. And these are people for whom the last 26 years, where we've had sustained, uninterrupted economic growth, would have formed a big chunk of their highest earning sort of working lives. And even they are saying that they don't feel that they've benefited from this period of what we see as prosperity. Who do people think have been the big winners? Well, 74% of survey respondents said that large corporations have benefited a lot, gained a lot, and 74% of surveys said that senior executives have gained a lot. So we can see one of the big disconnects that we're all familiar with if we read the papers right there. So that's an important one, and I'll come back to it. Now, what's sitting beneath the story and how are we thinking about this? Well, I think one of the things and one of the messages for economists like me is that actually the community has had its finger on the pulse probably a little bit more than some of us who comment on the headline figures. Because when you look beneath the GDP numbers, what sits beneath those is GDP per capita or income per capita numbers that have been nowhere near as strong, and actually cost of living pressures, which of course the headline GDP numbers don't really reflect. And so what people are telling us is that what matters to them is how they feel right now. So us talking about 26 years of economic growth really doesn't amount to much to people who don't feel that their lived experience right now is translating in the way that we're talking about. And that was reinforced in our survey as well when we asked people how they were finding their living circumstances at the moment, where 1 in 3 people said that they were finding it difficult or very difficult to live on their current incomes. So I think that's a really important message. We cannot look at the headline numbers and assume that that translates around the economy and translates in a way that resonates with the community. So again, just to reiterate, that simple line that I'm familiar with, growth equals prosperity, is actually not the line that most people think about. So the next part of the survey really focused on what are the issues that matter to people. And again, you know, by way of background, CEDA's reflecting on the issues that it wants to look at in its own research agenda and how we can develop some themes that connect with the community and connect with the economy in meaningful ways. So what we did was we presented survey respondents with a range of issues that tried to encompass the breadth of economic development, so beyond just economic growth, where we looked at a range of dimensions of economic development across things like health and lifestyle, a strong community, a strong economy, but also an ethical one where we tried to pick up issues of sustainability. And we listed a number of issues within each of those themes, and then survey respondents were given repeatedly different combinations of all of those issues and asked to rank which ones were the most important, which was the most important and which was the least important to them personally, in terms of their personal lives. And once they've done that a number of times, you get a picture of consistently what are the issues that they keep coming back to. Yes, that's really important to me. No, that's not important. And when you look through the results, you'll see some scoring, and how the scoring translates is that an issue of roughly average importance is an issue that's ranked 3, would get a score of 3. An issue that's really important would be above 3. And what we got was a very strong and consistent message across the country, across demographics, across income brackets, on these 5 issues consistently. And those 5 issues are reliable, low-cost basic health care, which had a score of 9, so 3 times more important than something else, than an average issue. Reliable, low-cost essential services, stable, affordable housing, high-quality chronic disease services, and reduced violence in homes and communities. Now, maybe that's not surprising to people. Basically, you want to feel that you're healthy, you've got a roof over your head, and you live in a safe community. But I suspect it's not surprising that when we look at so much of the debate, at least at the moment, these are not issues that are front and centre of the debate. And these are the issues that people are telling us really matter the most to them. There are some issues in there that to me were surprisingly unimportant. 3 that I'll highlight: reduced commuting times, access to high-quality information and communication technology, and the ability to move between jobs and sectors with ease. And some of these things were us trying to understand where we see some of the future challenges coming around this whole narrative around people not having lifetime careers and all the rest of it. These were very unimportant to people. at least based on our survey. And I'll call out one that I'm going to come back to, which was in the personal list of issues, the most contested, which was private health insurance. And by most contested, I mean that a lot of people said it was very important to them and a lot of people said it was unimportant. So you've got an average of, okay, 3. But actually you can see there's really split views on it. And I'm going to come back to that once I've talked a little bit about the national issues of importance. So having looked at the personal issues, the other thing we wanted to then do is say, well, what are the issues that you think matter to the nation's future? And in the way we presented these, we're actually also trying to get some insights around how people might like issues addressed. And I'll come back to healthcare because that's one that really, I think, highlights the point. But let me just quickly touch on the top 5. And again, really consistent, strong message across the country. High quality, accessible public hospitals. Strong regulation to limit foreign ownership of Australian land and assets, high quality choice of aged care, increased pension payments and tough criminal laws and sentencing. What was widely unimportant? Again, this one probably not so surprising in terms of the items that crop up here. A strong private school system, lower company taxes, increased humanitarian intake of refugees and less business regulation. Now again, perhaps not surprising, not least because of some of the things that we've seen coming out in the media and this disconnect between business success and the wider community, I think is an important one. In the most contested issues as regards the nation, perhaps again unsurprisingly the issue that came up there was immigration, and it came up in 2 ways. A very contested result around lower immigration and a contested result around limitations on foreign worker visas. So both came with very disparate views in terms of importance or lack of importance. Now, what's the key takeout here? I think there's a really strong theme here that goes to the importance of the compact between the community and government in the provision of essential services. Now, again, if I look, I said I'd talk about how we join these 2 issues of the personal and the national, and I think the health issue is one that's really, really important. So people are saying that access to high quality, affordable health care is really, really important to them. They're very contested around their views around private health insurance, and they didn't rate private hospitals as being important. And again, let's join that to some of the things we've seen in the media, where you're seeing stories about people leaving private hospitals and moving back into the public system, concerns around out-of-pocket costs. So I think people do have concerns around the cost and affordability of these services now and into the future. And from a policy perspective, these issues are very, very important to us as a nation, not least because the community cares about them, but also because they are the sorts of services that face tremendous challenges in the future, with population ageing, rising costs, technology that's actually contributing to more being able to be done, but also higher costs, and questions around affordability at the very time when governments are also looking to reduce tax revenues for a whole range of reasons. So how we think about meeting community expectations in this really important area is a very, very significant issue for all Australians. And it's important because while people are looking to the public sector to deliver these services, the reality is that delivering these services efficiently, effectively and reliably in the future is actually going to require innovation, and it's going to have to require both the public sector and the private sector being involved in that. And what this survey tells us is that there's a lot of work to be done there in terms of understanding what community expectations are, engaging with the community about how we can deliver better outcomes for less money, and how the private sector and the public sector can work together towards that. And there's a very clear message from the community about some of the things that they think they need more clarity around coming from this survey. Let me just close my comments by talking a little bit about the disconnect with business and the economy. It's very clear that we are going to have to work harder to connect the community to the benefits from economic growth. The challenge for us in this, of course, is that the missing ingredient, and I thank Damien from First State Super for mentioning the productivity word, which no one really likes, but which is so fundamental to our future, economic future, and a strong community as well. To drive productivity, we need a strong business sector. We need a strong business sector that's innovating, that's bringing new ideas to entrenched challenges. But at the moment, there's not a lot of support for the measures that would actually enable that. And that message comes through very strongly. So I think a very important part of what the reform agenda is going to be in the future is going to be demonstrating that the benefits of a strong business sector to the wider community through jobs, through opportunities, through education and training, so that people see and feel that they are connected to the benefits of economic growth in a way that's meaningful for them. So that's the big challenge, is how we connect. Well, this is the disconnect at the moment, and the scope and the challenge for us is to create this connection in the future, where community expectations are recognised as being what prosperity is all about, where community expectations align with innovation, where it aligns with productivity, and where the community feels that they're sharing in the benefits of productivity, economic growth and a strong business sector. So that's a quick snapshot of what is a tremendous amount of information in the broader survey.